So I guess good afternoon, everybody. Yom Tov, Shabbat Shalom. It's a little early. I want to thank you all for coming today. My name is Anthony Baltiro. I'm the Director of Library Services here at the college. And today on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we have a very special guest that wants to share his story. I kind of want to give you a little bit of history about Mr. Landau. So Mr. Landau is a very accomplished educator. He's taught countless classes covering the Holocaust, classical art, and much more at multiple institutions, including University of North Carolina, Asheville, the Texas Christian University, the YMI Cultural Center in Asheville, and right here at Blue Ridge Community College. Mr. Landau is also an accomplished docent who helped to curate and guide the artwork and programs at the Dallas Holocaust Museum, the Dallas Museum of Art, the Arlington Museum of Art, and for UNCA's OLLI program. If that isn't enough, Mr. Landau is also an attorney. He received his Juris Doctorate with honors from Gonzaga University, and he also served as United States Air Force captain. But as you can tell, that's not why he's here today. Mr. Landau is here to share his family story as a second-generation Holocaust survivor. And I'll let him get into the details of what that means. For today's presentation, Mr. Landau is going to start by sharing his story. After, we hope to have a fruitful question and answer session with all of you. If you look around, we have paper and pencils. Feel free to jot down your thoughts and questions while the presentation is going on. And as the topic of the Holocaust is very vast, we would like to keep the questions and narrative focused on Mr. Landau's personal story. Now, if you could all, please help me give a warm welcome to Mr. Ari Landau.
Thank you. I'm Ari Landau. This is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, created by the United Nations back in 1951. There's a second Remembrance Day, which is April 17th from the Jewish calendar, which is Yom HaShoah. And for the students that are here, I have a bracelet. These are mine from Dallas, but I had these made for you. It says Yom HaShoah, and on the other side it says Upstander. Yom means day, and HaShoah, remembrance. So why are we here? This is to honor. It started out to honor the 6 million Jews that were killed by Nazi Germany between the years 1933 and 1945, and to honor those resistance fighters against Nazism. Over the years, it's changed, and there were actually not only 6 million Jews killed, which was almost every Jew that was in Poland. In 1933, Poland had 3.3 million Jews. 1945, 3 million of them were killed in the death camps and throughout Nazi Germany occupied areas by the Nazi government and by their collaborators, which are other countries from Eastern Europe and so forth. So this is the day where we get to give thanks to them. And what's nice is if you go to Yad Vashem, which is the International Memorial Center in Jerusalem, they set it up not as this grim cemetery and these giant 50,000 people buried and so forth. It's a museum. It's artistic. And it deals with revitalization, with hope, with the future, in a very tasteful, delightful way. But let me get to the slides now. I'm a second-generation survivor. So, what's a first-generation survivor? Well, back in 1945, there was just you're a survivor or not, but the definition changed. They said if you were in the concentration camps, the death camps, under Nazi terror, under control and so forth, and you survived, you're a survivor. Okay, my father was at Auschwitz, Mauthausen, and Buchenwald. I know those three, but he was at others too, because you go to different places. There were two ways you survived. One is work. So you have the infamous sign there on the gates where it says, Arbeit macht frei. Somebody said, okay, if I work real hard, I'll get free. No, the whole purpose of the Nazi program, they need a lot of slave labor to run the Nazi military program to control and move 11 million people. So it was slave labor. Look at this. They all came to see me. But we don't have any chairs. So make do. All right, so it's changed. So then as time went on, the people start saying, well, what happens about me? I'm a flight survivor. They forced me out of my home. They forced me out of Poland, out of Austria-Hungary, and wherever, and I had to run to Asia and to other places of the world to survive. Am I not a survivor? Did they not terrorize and take everything from me? And they said, yes, we have to expand the definition. And then they started saying, well, what about the children of the survivors? If you're a child of a survivor, you've been traumatized. This is not, let's get over it and move on. This is the worst thing that can happen in humanity. We created a phrase for it back in 1945, genocide. The sad thing is, once you open up, that's the way of doing things and getting away with it, it perpetuates and continues. So we look at today at the Ukraine, and you ask yourself, is there genocide being practiced? The ruthless execution and killing of men, women, and children, that's genocide. So that's something that is a reality. That's not false news. So a second generation means my dad was in Auschwitz. And then in 1947, I was born. Now, check this out. Traditional Polish Jew marries young German Protestant. You with me? You thought you were screwed up, right? So when we emigrated to the United States, my mother had to convert to Judaism and take the name Rose, right? And we come to America, I'm 3.5 years old, and I couldn't speak anything except German. My father spoke Hebrew, Yiddish, Polish, German. My mom spoke German. So in the house, as I'm a little boy, we spoke German. I go to kindergarten, and they look at me. I didn't know it at the time, thank God, but they said, he must be a Nazi. He's speaking German. And they said, now, wait a minute. We're the victims. Papa had on his arm his number, 11643, tattooed. He always wore a long sleeve shirt. Always. Didn't matter what the weather was or whatever. He never wanted to show his number, and he never wanted to acknowledge or let people know that he was a victim. That's one of the psychological things that happens to victims. And they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. So what do? They just eliminate it and suppress it and start building a new life. He's 54 years old, and he marries my mother, who's 25 years younger, and she converts, and they come to America and start a new life. It wasn't that easy. So let's move on if I can. This here is the inside of a railway boxcar. We conveniently call it cattle cars. They're not cattle cars. To move millions of people from getting them out of Germany, that was the first goal. Get all the Jews out of Germany. So we push them to Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria. But then when you have the Anschluss in 1938, you have the Czechoslovakian Sudetenland take over by Hitler, right? All of the places you ran to get away, here come the Germans and they occupy those areas. So where you thought you might have some freedom and you might escape it, no. Another fact, if you remember August 23, 1939, 7 days before World War II starts, you have the Ribbentrop-Molotov agreement by the two secretaries of foreign affairs for Germany and Russia. and they sign a non-aggression pact. And they say, okay, Germany and Russia will not fight a war against each other because we already have this plan 7 days later to invade Poland with 3 million soldiers, German soldiers. And we won't fight each other. And where we in our town, Piotrków, many of them ran to the east to go to Russia, thinking that they could find safety there. On September 17th, according to that non-aggression pact, the Soviets then attack from the east. So they already designed they're going to carve up Poland. And so there was nowhere to go. So let's move on. Oh, so that's what it is. It's not like in Dr. Zhivago where you have a nice cozy place, right? The reason it's different than a cattle car, these cars were big enough for 3 cows or maybe 10 people. They crammed in 100 people into each one of these box cars. And you would literally be like this, and if you had to go to the bathroom, you went to the bathroom. There wasn't place and so forth. But in the cattle car, you can open up the bottom and let out all of the waste because you want to keep the cattle clean and so forth. There was no such things. These were box cars that you put boxes in. So let's move on. So that's my dad. Fischer Landau, 1945. Right? We had 48 people in our immediate family. I have the records I'm going to share with you showing the list of all of the people in our family that were executed. The only ones that survived was my father and his daughter, my half-sister Maria. Another story I'm going to get to. But look what he's wearing. What does that look like? Well, let me back up. All right, so stay with me on this. You're going to have to trust. This is the personal card when you go into Buchenwald, where they register you and they put all the details and facts about you, right? So I'll just read a couple of things to you. But what I want you to notice is up here in this box, and that's 116463. That was his tattoo number. But I'm going to show you another picture better. But I've got his name, Fischer Landau. His birth date was January 31, 1893. I didn't know that was his birth date. I thought he was born in 1900. Because when we immigrated to the United States, he told everybody he was born in 1900, so it'll be smoother through immigration for whatever reason. It's only after I did research and everything and got these documents, find out he was born 7 years earlier. Yeah, that's part of being a survivor. Is you don't really know your history. Yeah, and as you find out, it's amazing. He was married to Faja Blumenstein. He was a hat maker. He had a hat shop in Piotrków, Trybunalski. And so in all of his documents, they write down that he's a hat maker and so forth. So he'd have an occupation. He had 2 daughters, Anna and Maria. They were living in the ghetto, and I'll tell you about that when we get there. The way he spelled his name, it looked like an L-A-U-D-A-U, and this is a correction. So you see his number up there? Einsatzkarte. That means entrance card. And there's my dad, Liberation at Buchenwald, 1945. Elie Wiesel was there, right? Who was a Nazi? Simon Wiesenthal was there. A lot of these famous people. You see, Buchenwald was close to Berlin, northern central Germany. So as they were shifting people back to get away from the Russian troops, and the Nazis were trying to hide all of these atrocities they were doing. There he was. And he's wearing a U.S. Army uniform with no insignia. How could he get that? And what was going on? He was in Hof an der Saale, that's where I was born. which is right then, which was the West German border. And all of the people from the concentration camps and that were put into displaced persons camps. So we have over the next 7 years about 250,000 displaced people in these camps. And they were essentially camps run by the governments, French, English, and American. But they were just camps until you could find your way home. And all he had originally was the pajamas they gave him, right? So he gets these, and he starts working for Captain Lassiter from the Army. And he would be an interpreter, and he would help them seek out and look for Nazis and look for other criminals and so forth. And so he was given permission to wear the uniform and then be the interpreter. Because what happened was there were a lot of Nazi officers and soldiers that would then get into American uniforms and so forth to try and sneak away. Right? So one of the problems is that when you're there, you have to have papers or something, because if they think that you're a spy or trying to run away, they're going to arrest you or shoot you. It wasn't like the war's over, let's now just relax. So that's what he was doing. And he was given permission to wear that because he didn't have any clothes. He was naked. They put newspaper around him with a string. When they put you in the concentration camp, the uniform they give you, that's it for as long as you're there. Because they only anticipate you to live 6 months. The average person in any of these camps, concentration camps and death camps, lived for a very short time. So let me show you the letter. Okay, now you can read that, can't you? Okay, that's page 2. So I'm going to read you page 1. And there's a lot in here so you can understand. This is the text for this July 30, 1945 letter for Fischer Landau. Company A, 33 Army, to whom it may concern, the bearer, Fischer Landau, has worked for this company since he was released on May 19, 1945. When they liberated the concentration camps, right, they still kept them in control to like crowd control, but also to look for soldiers and so forth. So when it says when he's released, they finally checked him out and everything, and they realized he was a Polish Jew. You will find him neat, clean, honest, loyal, intelligent, and hardworking. He is being returned to his home in Poland because we are leaving and laws make it impossible to take him with us. We sincerely regret we cannot keep him. You will find him wearing an American uniform. This uniform is the only clothes he owns. He is entitled to wear them. Any help you can give him to help him reach his destination will be appreciated. It took me a year to find Captain Lassiter's his grave. He's from Arkansas, but I did locate his 2 children, Lassiter Jr. and his daughter and so forth. I think that he was a hero, because understand something. He's now being left in Germany with an American uniform, and the unit isn't there to verify for him. If he doesn't have this letter to show anybody, they could shoot him on the spot as a spy. This is part of the terror and the after effects of the war. He goes home to Poland, Piotrkow. He had a house, right? When they built the ghetto, he had 12 families living in the house with him. Right? They had the ghetto, and it only holds maybe 3,000, and now they had 30,000. So any place you could go, you lived together and try to survive, right? So he went back, and as he came back to Piotrkow, here's his house and everything. And he was open anti-Semitism, hatred of him, hatred of the fact that he survived, hatred that he would come back for his own property, because I took it over and I live here now and I'm not compassionate and care about you. I have to look out for myself. That's what it was all about. That's why he went back to the displaced persons camp. Now while he's at the camp, He knows his one daughter, Maria, he thinks is still alive. Maria converted to Catholicism before World War II started. She went to the local priest and got papers and everything to show that she was a Catholic. So when the Nazis came in, and after 3 weeks everybody was under their control, she was sent to East Germany to work in a bomb factory. So she survived because she had to work in the bomb factories. And so when the war was over, the International Red Cross was trying to help people find each other and get together. So they looked, and they didn't have computers and records like we do now, right? And after a number of months, they reunited, right? Got his daughter back. So now the question is, what are we going to do? In the interim, he meets my mother, who is also a displaced person, and he starts smuggling her food. Now, when you go to the store and you see a potato, that's at least a week's meal right there. So he would bring food for my mother, Ursula, and Grandma and Grandpa. This is what people do. We like to live lives where everything's structured and comfortable. We know the rules, everybody obeys it, and we're all nice to each other. And then we sing, what's that song? Kumbaya? Yeah, I still don't know it. But anyway, that's not life. But it can be a beginning of a new life. So let's get back to this letter. And here's what they give you first. Now, what I want you to notice here, this is Nazi camp uniforms. You got a hat. Your shoes were wooden clogs. If they wore out or whatever, many times you would just reach over to the guys dead next to you and take their clogs. You have to survive. Huh? And then you see here the insignias. You see the red and the P and the number. The numbers is tattoo, Auschwitz, right? So what is the numbering system? Well, they had different symbols that you would put on your shirts and your pants. So I'm a Nazi guard. I can see you there, and I know exactly, are you Polish? Are you a Jehovah's Witness? Are you a pervert? Are you a political enemy? Are you Polish? And so forth. If you had the red one, that means you're a political enemy. If you have the yellow one, that means you're Polish. And if you're a Jewish Pole, like my father was, then you'd have a P there, and so forth. Jehovah's Witnesses were purple, homosexuals were lavender, and all these insignias that you would put then on the pants or on the shirts. Now what they did was, when you came to the camps, if you were from Slovenia or whatever, they would keep that group of people together. The men and the women were separated. The women that survived were only because they were workers, domestic things and so forth. The men that survived, they did a lot of hard work. Now they would shift these workers, like my father. He went to, I think, like altogether 5 camps. I only know 3 for sure. But if they needed some roads to be built, if they needed some factories to be built so that they could do armaments or airplanes or tanks or whatever, you take 10,000 people here and you shift them to there. Right? If you die on the way, that's okay. We have plenty of humans. So that's his tattoo number. The red one is a political enemy of Nazism or Nazi government. And the F is what? French. Right? So you're from France. So you see all of that in one thing. Now we all had to wear the Mogen David. Right? This was in the ghettos and everywhere. You wore the Star of David. Huh? And what happens if you're in the ghetto and you forget to wear the clothing with it, or you didn't wear it with your Morgan David, and you go out in the street? Shoot you on sight. Shoot you on sight. It's a death sentence. Well, so here we are. Even the kids all had the same, right? So Yahashua is Israel's day of commemoration for the 6 million Jews and its collaborators that in the Jewish resistance. And then eventually everybody said, well, there were 11 million that died in those camps and so forth. Another 5 million of other groups. So we should not just remember the 6 million Jews, let's remember the 11 million victims. And those included political opponents, Roma, Germans with mental and physical disabilities, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Slavic peoples, right? The first ones to be killed in the Nazi system were those that were mentally and physically disabled. It was called Aktion Theresa 4, Action T4, because the headquarter building was on the street in Berlin, T Street 4, right? But that was the program, and they went to all the mental hospitals and wherever, and they did euthanasia, and using chemicals and that killed 300,000. That's where it started, right? So let's move on. So this is the March of the Living 2014, carrying the Torah, and they're over there at Auschwitz marching. And you see this Holocaust Remembrance pin designed by Hanka Kornfeld Martyr. It's this one. Now, you want it? You got to go to Dallas and buy one from the shop. But what you have here is you have the dove of peace. You have the green leaf of, like Genesis, the Garden of, I'm sorry, wrong religion. Plants, rejuvenation, life, rebirth, right? And then you have the barbed wire. So this is the national symbol for the Remembrance Day. Huh? Almost got in trouble mixing up religions, huh? People always get angry with me, but I keep saying, well, Jesus was Jewish. Oy vey. It's really his story. Okay, let's move on. And here are the annual march from Auschwitz to Birkenau, Yom HaShoah, all right? Now this is the central database from Yad Vashem over in Israel. And I typed in my family's name. That here is Zalata Fega. She's from Krakow. That was my father's wife. And the way she and Anna were killed, they were living in the ghetto and they tried to escape. And when they say curfew, you don't go out in the streets or anywhere when it's curfew. And they tried to escape out of the ghetto and they were shot down by the Nazi guards. So Maria's in Germany, my father's in the ghetto, and he's about to be transferred to one of the other concentration camps. But please notice, all of these names, Landau, Piotrkow, Tribunalski, that's page 1. There's 46 of them. The whole page. Yep. Yeah. It was kind of shocked me. You see, one of the problems with second generation survivors, we never knew our family. And one of the psychological realities of being a second generation survivor is you have this enormous vacuum. You know, holidays are horrible because you get these wonderful Norman Rockwell pictures of everything, the family getting together and having a Coke and so forth, right? And you don't have that. And even though you sublimate, and in my case, I became a teacher and my family became my students, whether they liked it or not, right? But you never feel that intimacy that you have with a family member or somebody who you're totally in love with. Sir?
How was that list generated?
It was generated from the records that Yad Vashem and at Arolet, where they get all these Nazi records. The Nazis kept records of everything. And so we have, you know who the Einsatzgruppen, do you know who they are, the SS? These were the black uniform. These were the personal guards of Adolf Hitler. They're the ones who end up running all of the concentration camps, the Einsatzgruppen, and all of the death camps and so forth. When you see them, you see the thunderbolts of two black lines coming down, right? Yeah, that's who they are. The Einsatzgruppen had the specific job of going into the towns as they came into Europe and seeking out all the Jews and lining them up and executing them. You know, they estimate over 150,000 were killed that way. These ruthless people, right? Didn't you ever ask yourself this? How could they spend the whole day killing Jews and then go home in the evening, put on some Beethoven, some Brahms, read some poetry, and eat a nice little meal? What kind of sick people do you have to be? And this is what Elie Wiesel said. He says, one thing that the Holocaust taught us is you can be an educated person and yet you can go out and kill people mercilessly, and you can do both. I can't. You shouldn't. They have to learn. You can't. So that's where we get the records, because what they did was the Einsatzgruppen then would make an accounting. And I have a sheet of that, where it shows for 1 month how many different people they found and executed. And they would have their ethnic groups and so forth. And the one I'm talking about, the one for the month of December, it was 133,000. So they had the names. That's where they generated their lists and so forth. All right. So wait till you hear this story. That's my sister.
Is that you?
Yeah, I was a little skinnier then. Do you remember the days when you could buy a pair of jeans with a waist of 29?
That's my wrist size.
That's half of me now. 29 and 29. They fit, right? Now listen to this story. You like that one? That's good, huh?
Could you go back to pictures?
Mm-hmm.
You just instantly you had a family picture at a table there.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get to that.
Oh,
Okay, so it's 1978. I'm teaching over in Germany. We get visas, my wife Kay at that time, and we go to Stanislavski. That's where my niece, Maria, is. My half-sister, Maria. Mm-hmm. And she's got 3 daughters. And you got Sophia, you got Grażyna, and you got Basha. And that's their children. And what happened was, we're going to back up a little bit. It's somewhere around 1973 or so. And I used to go over to my father's house every day. He never talked to me. He never told me about the Holocaust. I learned all of this from Maria and through others and so forth. He never once talked to me about the Holocaust. He couldn't. You know? What happens is when we see Holocaust survivors, we kind of want to treat them as if they just had a bad day and it's okay, we'll move on now. No, this is post-traumatic stress disorder for a lifetime. So I'd always come over, knock on the door, Papa, little kiss. We'd sit down. The way we communicated was kuchen and coffee, right? We give you a cup of coffee and we give you a piece of cake, sit down, shut up and enjoy TV, right? That's what you do. If you go out on a date, you don't know what to do, buy her a piece of cake, give her a cup of coffee, and shut up, right? So we're sitting there next to each other. True story. And all of a sudden, he said, Brunke, I'm going upstairs now. I'm going to bring your sister down. I said, Papa, I don't have a sister. He says, yes, you do. Brings her down. And this, you can't see it, Laura. We have the same eyebrows, the same face. Instantly, we knew. So here's how it goes. It's 1950. He says, now we're going to emigrate to the United States. I've got my new wife, Ursula, and her son from her previous arrangement, Germans. I've got myself and my son from our marriage, Ari, right? And he says to Maria, I am the Papa. We are now going to America. You will go with me. You know the old days when the Papa was everything, is in charge? Not anymore. And she says, no, Papa, I can't go. I've got 3 daughters. Hi, Sophia, Basha, Grazina. I have to stay here with my husband, George. He's a forest ranger and that. And they're in Stanislavski, which is right down there by the Czechoslovakian border, by the mountains, right by the Alps. And she doesn't go. He then says, you're dead to me forever. He never told me. So you go through this vacuum of life, and you know, I go to kindergarten and first grade, they all think I'm a Nazi, they all treat me like whatever. I didn't learn how to speak English until about 2nd grade. Huh? These are the results of what the Holocaust does to everybody. So anyway, she comes down, the most intimate, beautiful relationship I've ever had. My sister. Right? So we're there for 30 days. Every single day, I go to work. I'm teaching high school. We get out at 3:30, at 3:35, I'm picking her up, right? We go everywhere, a big 30-day holiday. And then she finally says, okay, I got to go home now. Poland, the visa time is up. And I said, I will come. I will come to you. So she goes. And we kept in contact and so forth. Then when I was teaching in Germany, one of the reasons I wanted to teach there was to do my own missionary work and go look at Poland and my father and everything else, and to find my sister. So this here is Christmas of 1978. We went there in Poland in the summer. Now, don't do what I'm about to tell you, because you end up in jail. So it's Christmas, we have our Volvo. I have $3,000 worth of clothes, all under the seats. I have a 25 or 30 pound frozen turkey in the back, because it's wintertime, it'll keep, right? And so the whole car is down lower from all the food, right? Cases of food and everything. I'm smuggling it all in. And I'm young at that time. So I'm invincible, right? We get to the border there, Czechoslovakia, okay, so we can get into Poland. And the guards come out, and it's so cold, thank you, it was so cold. They didn't want to be out there checking out the car. So they come up, you have anything to declare? Only that it's cold outside. Good enough, move on. So we get past the border guards, come into Stanislavski, had a magnificent, wonderful Christmas. And what was fascinating, we wrapped every present like we do here, right? They didn't want to open up the presents because they don't have wrapping paper and ribbons. Just to hold it was amazing. So I said, well, you got to open it. There's something good in there. The little mouse needs air, right? Yeah. So then I brought for the daughters blue jeans. Oh, I was popular. And I brought these 3 beautiful, expensive dresses for Maria. So she could now, when she goes to the store, right? It's not the old clothes, it's la-di-da, you know. We brought boxes and boxes of tea. As soon as she got the food and the tea, she locked it up in the dresser. Because if you leave it out, it's not going to be there for long. Right? This is like really good stuff. So brought them all of that, yes.
Did the blue jeans have holes in them like they do today?
No! True story. He says, did you give him jeans with holes in it? I'm in junior high school. And we were poor. We were poor. We were so poor I couldn't afford a middle name. We were really poor, right? And so I would get the hand-me-downs from my brother. So he'd give me the jeans, and you could see they're worn out and so forth, right? So what do? You go to Safeway, you buy a patch, and you iron it on. Now, as soon as you iron it on and you walk into class, and they all say, oh, there's a poor Jew right there. Look at that guy, right? And so they're discriminating against me because I couldn't have better clothes. That went on for a long time, right? So I was always in fights, in other words. But no, I don't know why you guys spend $200 to get a pair of pants with holes. Buy them for $69. Come to my house. I'll cut the holes, and you can even decide how you want it. All right, moving on now.
Looks like my grandmother's Pesach table.
Yeah,
That's why I asked you to back up before. You know?
yeah. So here's the wedding picture of my father. Another story. You like the story so far? I'm trying to give. See, you don't usually when you hear a Holocaust speaker, it's the same old stuff, right? This is more interesting to find out how it affected family. So they get married. Now my father gets some money. They get together in the displaced persons. Then and that's near Buchenwald. Then he goes to a small town, Hof an der Saale. That's where I was born, 1947. And they got some money for the survivors. So he used the money to open up a shop. So he has down the street here's St. Michael's Church, and down the street here is where his shop was. We went there, after all these years, the shop's still there. And he sold tobacco, alcohol, chocolate, nylons, right? But he had to go to Greece to get it from the black market. So he'd go from Germany down to Greece, and he had 4 bodyguards with machine guns. And they'd load up the wagons or whatever, right? And then they came back to Germany with the goods. Couldn't go to Monkey Wards, they weren't around, right? Another aspect of how do you make and survive. So he raised enough money so that in 1950 he says we can now emigrate to the United States. But all things, so there's my mom. Now look at these clothes. Pretty good, huh? You know, going from the pajama, which is a death uniform, to this. He's 54 years old. See, at what point, for you youngsters out there, at what point do you have to stop living? Never. You never stop your learning. You never stop your goals. You always try to achieve things that you want in your life. You surround yourself with positive people, not the toxic people. And then allow yourself to have the courage to try. And if you fall on your face, put on a different pair of pants and get up and keep going. True story. True story. I graduated from law school with honors, right? I was on law review, I was published. All these big things, and the grade point average. Because I couldn't speak English, I was always 4 years behind in language. So when I got to high school, and I'm a sophomore, I'm reading at the level of a 5th grader. Follow? I graduated from high school with a 1.8 grade point average. I was in the bottom 10% of my class. I could remember everything. But when I read something, it would be word for word. And when I got to the end, I couldn't remember all the words. So I just keep studying. It took me another 4 years after high school where I finally could start reading and comprehending. Huh? So.
Is the pen the same as your pen, the leaf?
No. No, that's... No. So there I am. That little pudgy guy. So they tell me this. They say, Brunky, when you were born and you're a little pudgy, we used to put you in the window of the shop. So there's a little fat Jewish kid. And all the German people, right, were living in a German town, and they come by, hey, little guy. And I'm there, right? But we were trying to build life. So let's look at this now. This is Pietrkov Tribunalski. So I want you to see where everything's at. Do you see down here where it's Krakow? Okay, so that's where the Archbishop, And the Pope came from John Paul II and so forth. Czestochowa, where the Black Madonna, is here. Roslaw, which is a major town. Over here, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Germany. Up here, Gdansk and so forth. Here's Warsaw. But Piotrko Trybunalski, the real name was Piotrkow. And it was the publishing center for the Hebrew world. All of the Torahs, all of the books, everything were published here in Piotrkow. It was such a popular place that the Hebrew religious group would have their tribunals there, study teachings, interpretations, and so forth. So they added the name Trybunalski because it was that important historically. Now what I want you to think about is when the Nazis came in, they now started gathering everybody like giant, these were the ghettos, like big corrals, right? And then they would take all of the Jews from the smaller towns and funnel them into this big corral. Then it was time to empty them and take them to the death camps. Then they would put them on the boxcars and so forth. So there was a system of taking all of these major cities and towns and making a wagon wheel effect. And this is Piotrkow's ghetto. This is the ghetto here, and those are the main streets. And then we have in here, at one time, 17,000. It's only big enough for about, 3,000. There were 17,000 Jews in Piotrkow. In 1950, they had a reunion of the original people that survived the war, and out of all of them, there were only 300. All the rest were killed. So here's, they built these ghetto walls. Now, have you ever seen this before? Okay, most of you have heard there were 6 death camps, right? They were all built in Poland. And then you've heard of these other concentration camps, Neuengamme, Bergen-Belsen, Ravensbrück, Sachsenhausen, Buchenwald, Flossenburg, Dachau, Mauthausen, right? Those are the concentration camps. Concentration camps is where they held all of the workers to be transported somewhere, right? The death camps were established in Poland because one of the first rules of Hitler's plan was to get rid of all of the Jews out of Germany. Right? There were 350,000 Jews living in Germany. They were all transferred or exported into the eastern part of Europe. Follow? Now, what you didn't know, this is from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, that during those 12 years, Nazi Germany and its allies created over 43,000 camps and incarceration sites. How do you move 11 million people? How do you feed them? How do you try to keep order and then eventually put them in cars to these death camps? You have to have a very organized, mechanized, bureaucratic structure to do that. And that's what the Nazi system set up. But a lot of people don't know this. Right?
Question.
Yes?
The prior slide made a distinction between death camp and concentration camp. Yet Dachau had ovens,
Yes.
so it was also a death camp.
Yeah, what he said was that in the 6 death camps that lasted for about 4 years, there were 3.2 million Jews killed. You say, well, where's the other 6, where's the other 3 million? In every single camp, including Dachau, there was death and executions and so forth. And in Dachau, which started out, Dachau was started in 1928. It was to keep political enemies and those that didn't agree with the Nazi group, right? Hitler doesn't take over till 1933. So 5 years before, they've already started this program of creating prisons for political agitators. And they then went and added the ovens. Auschwitz starts out as a work camp. And that's where they sent everybody to make rubber and chemical things, the IG Farben company, which is by Auschwitz, and to work in Eastern Europe, right? And then they eventually came and brought the ovens. So you start finding these ovens in even the smaller camps. We just focus on the 6 that were at the largest number.
Excuse me, you had mentioned before that your father went into Buchenwald, correct? But he went in there and he already had a number.
Yeah,
Did he get that at Auschwitz?
he got that through the first camp he went to. Now, my mother at that time told me that he went to Auschwitz. And then I know from my sister he also went to Mauthausen. So where did he get it? Well, wherever the first concentration camp is, here's what happens. You're either destined to be executed or go to the ovens. Links or right. If you go to the right, you're going to be a worker. Part of the process of indoctrination was you would be cleaned up, you would be loused, given powder to get rid of the lice and everything else. You're given your pajamas and your tattoo number. That's where it starts, and it stays with you forever.
But that was primarily in Auschwitz, though, that they gave you the tattoo on the arm.
No, it was not just at Auschwitz. It was not just at Auschwitz. It was at the other camps as well.
I knew that.
I never knew that either.
Yeah. So, you've always seen this picture, right? There's actually 2 camps here. This is the gates of hell, and it's at Birkenau. They had 2 camps. One is Auschwitz, which is where the barracks are and the gas chambers. And then about a mile from that is the entrance, the administrative center. And that's the gates of hell. So they would come in and it's always in the middle of the night, 2:30 in the morning. When the Gestapo came to your house or your building to take prisoners and so forth, it was always in the middle of the night. So my mother said we wake up in the morning and we look out and we wouldn't know if our neighbors were still there or not, right? And same thing with their cattle cars. So they bring you in and they go through. If you saw Sophie's Choice and Schindler's List, and then the trains are all brought inside the gates there at Birkenau. It's the middle of the night. They have these lights. They have these wild dogs. We have all these noises and everything. And then they open up the doors, and the first thing they do is they throw out all the bodies so they can get out. So then they get out and so forth, and these are the gates of hell. So I walked down this. I had to be where he was.
I walked down those tracks.
So here it is. This is what a real boxcar looks like. Huh? I think this may be the one in Belgium. But it's the international symbol and so forth. So this is when you come into Auschwitz arrival. They're separating the men and the women.
How do you get those pictures?
If you go to the U.S. Holocaust Museum or Yad Vashem, you'll see all of these documentary photographs. The ones that took the photographs were the Nazi photographers. They're documenting, look at the good works that we have done. We got rid of these diseased Jews, saved Europe, and now we're going to show off. You found nothing wrong with that. These are all destined to go to the chamber. These were, if you get to go to work, if they gave you a tattoo, you got life. You still have life, right? So let's talk about the Hitler Youth. I'm almost done, I'll answer some questions. But it all starts with the Hitler Youth. They have to take them when they're young and teach them to be part of the group and teach them to believe in this one man. Only I can bring greatness back to Germany. Only I can save Germany from all of the corruption. I can make Germany great again. Verbatim, I'm not making this up. You gotta be kidding. Okay, I'll tell him. There's somebody outside. He's got, your car is blocking the driveway. The license plate number is H476321745683. Would you move your license plate, please? All right. So Hitler Youth. It became conscript. Every child had to join Hitler Youth. And then it was like, it was just like the communist system, if you will. It's like the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and so forth, but we teach them different values and so forth, right? And so forth. And here you see they have the Schutzstaffel, the symbol of lightning, right? So you know what anti-Semitism is, right? You're against Semites. What it means is you hate Jews. You hate Jews. Why? You have to be taught to hate, right? Journalist William Marr originated the modern term, so forth. This was the propaganda. This was the eternal Jew. Goebbels controlled the film productions. Newsreel communicated what the Nazis wanted people to know and believe. So when you listen to the news media today, the internet, the shows and everything, right? They want you to hear certain things. Do you remember in 1964, Marshall McLuhan published his book, The Medium is the Massage? And what he was saying is, you've lost your individual ability to be creative in your thinking and critical. You're just being told what to say and do, being massaged. I should look like this, I should wear that, I should believe in that, and so forth, just to follow. That's the massage, right? And do you think any of our society has followed that? Almost everybody.
Today.
Yeah. So anyway, let me move on. Yeah, this was the eugenics, right? So you know that Jews have big noses. And they have this, that, and so, and all these physical attributes, right? And they would measure, and then bring in their doctors, scientists in, right? I have done all this research and everything, and I can tell that this is the skull of a Jew. Just nonsense. Yeah. But it was done on purpose, huh? And this is an example here. This was a chart posted in elementary classrooms and taught German youth, Jewish youth. His purpose was to help Aryan children distinguish friend and foe. Wow. So here's the Jews. And these are the Aryans, the good Germans. Blonde hair, blue eyes, smart, and here are all these Jews over here. And that's in the classroom. And if you were a Jew or that, they would make the Jewish kids stand up and they ridicule them. Yes, ma'am.
I'm burdened with the fact that the eugenics actually started here in America with Planned Parenthood. And didn't Hitler say, we can't be that extreme? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I know a lot about that. We also practice our own form of eugenics. So if you take the American Indian, for example, and we started sterilizing, there's a famous Supreme Court decision, and I don't remember the Supreme Court judge, but they authorized sterilization of mentally ill people. And then the chief judge of the Supreme Court, he says one generation of imbeciles is enough. But that was the thinking back in 1910, 1920, 30. It's all right. See, here's the key. Hitler's plan was to create utopia. Perfect society in a perfect world, and everything that doesn't fit our model, we eliminate. He was playing God. He wanted a utopia based on his German model. Okay. Hatred is not inevitable. Here's Goebbels with his propaganda. But are you familiar here? Der Stürmer is the official German newspaper. And the struggle, right? And it says, Die Juden sind unser Unglück. All of the problems you have are because of the Jews. You know, if those Mexicans, they're rapists and criminals and murderers and all these things, and you start calling them names, that's what they're doing here. If you got any problems, it's them that did it. Huh? So,
What's the man holding there?
this is the infamous lie, blood libel. This blood libel goes back to the Russian times and so forth, and it goes back to the Middle Ages. And they used to say that they used to take the children, the Jews would, into the forest, and they would stab them to death and collect their blood and then use it to make their matzah. And you had a whole generation for hundreds of years believing that nonsense. Yes, ma'am.
So it's pretty much like a witch hunt.
Yeah, the Jews were also a witch hunt, weren't they? In that regard, that's right. So here you have the drops of blood, so forth.
And that's in 1934, that's just in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, the Sturmer was there before Hitler. Keep this in mind. How did Hitler and the Nazis get in power? Did they go to war? They were elected into office. And everybody knew they were extremists and that they hated and that they were numbering and going to go after the Jews. Everybody knew that from 1928 on. So here's the bulletin boards in the streets. Mit der Stürme against the Jews. They are our misfortune. And this one here, those are the same blood belonging to the same Reich. So this is where they got into that thing about there's Jewish blood, which is diseased and bad. And there's Aryan blood, which is pure. No, there's A, B, and O. So, and I want to show you these two quotes by Adolf Hitler. This is part of the propaganda. When you start calling people names, those are the seeds from which hatred grows. Right? The personification of the devil as a symbol of all evil assumes the living shape of the Jew. Mein Kampf, Volume 1, Chapter 11. Providence has ordained that I, Adolf Hitler, should be the greatest liberator of humanity. You ever heard anybody saying that before? Okay. And this is a common. Now, let's think about the rest of the world. We have this genocide and all of this cleansing, whether it's Serbia, whether it's the Ukraine, whether it's Rwanda, whether it's Laos, Cambodia, and so forth, right? And they say Jews were Untermenschen, less than human. We're below the apes, right? People not worthy of living. The Jews are not worthy of living because they are not even human beings. And a whole nation bought into that. Science of death, ethnic cleansing. So when you hear these words, that's where they came from. Okay, I did this on purpose. I want to teach you something here. These are the 6 major death camps, right? Notice there are Kelmo, Auschwitz, Majdanek, Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka. We know these from our records. These are the amounts of people who died in those camps, came out to 3.1 million. Right? So you say, well, when you say 6 million Jews, it's not just those that died in the death camps. It's all of the camps and all of the people that were forced out. But look at the dates here. Kelmno, 1941 to 1945. Auschwitz, 1942 to 1945. Those two kept going. Even when the Germans were losing the war and the Russians were coming in, they kept exterminating people in those camps. They wanted to get rid of the evidence. Majdanek here, in 1944, it stops. They close it down. Belzec, 43. Sobibor, 43. Treblinka, 43. You see, when you do Ken Burns' history on the Holocaust, and he talks about these, like Sobibor or Babor, and these different forests and camps, thousands are killed that way, right? So that's how you get those numbers. Now I'm almost at the end, but ask yourself, why did the United Nations have to say in 1946 a Declaration of Human Rights? because the whole language prior to that was, some people are not human. They're less than. It's okay for us to go over and colonize, take slaves, kill these others, because they're not civilized like us. It's a warped way of thinking. That's not humanity. And this next one, oh. So these are our Untermenschen, these beautiful children. That's what it means to be Jewish. That's beautiful Jewish children. Starting a life together, huh? The entire family, or school here, they were all sent to Auschwitz and perished. So why do people do these things? Have you ever asked yourself that? And this is Dr. David Engelman. The book is Brain, Why Do I Need You? From birth, we learn that we need each other. The worst is solitary confinement. We seek acceptance by a group we identify with and will conform to gain it. Right? Even now at our age, you say, do I want to get in with this group? I don't like what they do and I don't think how they believe, but I'll go along with it for a while. You just go along with it? What are you going to teach your grandchildren? See, you're the most important thing in their life. I know they have a mom and a dad, but your grandpa and grandma, they know that they can get away with things and you love them unconditionally. Dad'll spank you. Okay, this is it. This is what you need to leave with as far as knowing.
I have a question.
Yep.
What do they have against Jehovah's Witnesses?
Okay, excellent. She said, why were the Jehovah's Witnesses targeted as part of the groups, right? First of all, Jehovah's Witnesses would not support a war effort at all. Second of all, they would not obey or pay allegiance to Hitler or some authoritarian government. They're pacifists, and they were openly against certain practices, and they would speak out against the anti-Semitism and that. So they were like political enemies. And okay, this is it. The Holocaust didn't begin with the building of crematoria, and Hitler did not come to power with tanks and guns. It all began with uttering words, with defamation, with language and propaganda. So the words that you use are devastatingly important. When I was teaching in high school, and here I have these kids and everything, or I'm with the kids on the tour, I had to be very careful that I used the right word. If I, as a teacher, use a word, so if I say those gypsies over there, we don't call them gypsies anymore. That's a derogatory word. You call them Romani or, understand? So, first they came for the communists, I didn't speak. Then they came for the unionists, I didn't speak. Then they came for the Jews, I didn't speak out. Then they came for me, and by that time no one was left to speak for me. Right? Did my students get a bracelet? And it says upstander. That's what we teach in all these places throughout the world. Is don't, you know, yes.
Do you think your dad survived because he was working? He was a slave worker?
Yes.
And he was strong enough to not succumb?
Yeah. See, the question, she says, why did your dad survive? Was he a hard worker and everything? The question is, why didn't he run over and fall on the electric wires and just end it? Some did.
Yeah.
But you have to be strong in your mind and believe that you'll survive this and then you can start a new life. This will come to an end. If I die, Hitler wins. Right?
What did your dad do?
Well, he owned a hat shop.
No, I mean in the...
Schleppen, physical work, wheelbarrows, you know, the pods there at Mauthausen where they put the giant blocks of blocks and you had to go up the 96 steps, the death of steps. That was my dad.
What did he do in America?
Then he came here, and same thing. He started working for what's called Denver Hat Company. So those baseball caps you get, where they mold them, that was his job. But let me tell you one thing. This is an interesting thing. I'm 4 years old. We're in America. And I'm not old enough to know what's going on, but we're now practicing Shabbos. We're having our bread. We're lighting our candles. My mom's covering her head. We're singing the songs and so forth. So he went back to being Jewish in a traditional way. And I remember that for 2 years. That's what they did. And then the family all went kaput. But the question I have is, where was God? And with all you went through, why did you go back to your God? And why did he do that? What do you think? He had to have some type of structure to help him get through life. All I knew all my life was Jehovah. He will add a sanctuary and so forth. I'm going back to what I knew, and I'm rebuilding my old life before the Nazis. A lot of people did that. A lot of people said, no, God wasn't there for me, so they went a different way. Huh? But you have to have something when it's, keep you going. Yes, ma'am.
Is there an organization for second-generation survivors?
Yes, if you contact any of these, you get on the internet and you say, I want a support group for second-generation survivors, they'll give you a whole list of them.
Now, my dad was in Poland, and the Jewish organization with Mr. Romkowski got him to Argentina. Does that mean I'm a second-generation survivor?
Probably. It goes by, you just follow your family tree in that regard. They couldn't figure out how do you define a survivor. And they said, what about the children and so forth? So he said, well, have first survivors, second generation survivors, third generation survivors. So they started recognizing that it affects everybody in that family tree. Different ways. What I'm telling you about me is very typical. Okay. All right. So all the students left, but this is what I wanted them to hear, right? History matters. The world we live in didn't just happen. It's the result of choices made by countless individuals and groups. Even the smallest of those decisions can have enormous consequences. The biggest problem that we as second generation is we feel like outsiders. We were always treated like outsiders, even when Jews were in Poland and Germany and so forth. We never fit in. Then we were told that we're diseased and we should be exterminated and so forth. And we survive, but we always feel like we don't fit in. So if you think about the immigrants that come to America from the whole world, right? It may take a long time for people to start treating them where they feel like they're in, like they belong. Because usually we say, you're not like us, so you say an outsider. Okay. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing. That's why it says, be an upstander. A lot of this stuff was going on where they're beating up and persecuting Jews in the streets, beating up women, this and that, children and everything. Horrible things were going on. And everybody stood back and said, I don't want to get involved. Because they'll come after me. Because this or that. So you think about children in schools, you would think if they see another child that has a problem, weapons, other things and so forth, right? Do you speak up? Or do you not want to be a tattletale? Heaven's sakes, speak up. Heaven's sakes, if you see bullies, did you know there's bullies in school? Yeah. You don't have to confront them physically, but you can go talk to the teacher, to the counselor, to the parents, somebody, If a kid comes to school and he's got bruises or whatever, then I as a teacher would immediately be on alarm. What's going on with this poor kid? But don't be a bystander. Be an upstander. Be a problem. Bother people. You remember Socrates, don't you? You don't remember Socrates? Come on, it's only 2,500 years ago. Yeah, that Greek guy, right? And it's a Socratic method we use in law school and everything. But he comes up and he gets in your face and he starts asking you questions. Well, why do you exist? Why do you want to exist? And what's wrong with your mom and dad? And what do you think of the Greek gods? And just causing them to be uncomfortable, right? It's like when your children are, 2 years old? And they ask you the ultimate question that drives you nuts. Why? Why? That's, critical thinking. All right. They feel their isolation, having lost their family members, and the human tragedy continues. And there it is. There it is. You save a child, you save a universe. So you have here his concentration camp number. This is his grandson. Hitler did not win. That child won. Right? So if you say there's a rise of anti-Semitism and hate and everything in the world, so we got two choices. We can go to our gated communities and say, I don't need that anymore. Or you can become active in many different ways. Even if it's going up to somebody, shaking their hand and saying, I'm glad you're here, welcome to America. Or, why don't you ease up and stop bullying on somebody? Whatever. You are the nucleus of those people that come around you. If you're positive and loving, they can't help. From that great philosopher, Oprah. And this is Diversity by Norman Rockwell. Okay, here's my short 15-minute lecture. Now, do we have questions? Yes?
Danke für deine wichtige deutsche Einlesung.
You speak a little German, right? And was will Sie sagen?
Don't know what you said. Sorry, background, my family's German. My grandparents were in Germany, though my family's not Jewish. They were tailor seamstresses, worked with many Jewish folks, and my grandmother, who lived in Cologne, got heavily bombed. Most of her family died in bombings, and my grandfather, who was an American GI, but first generation German immigrant, met her there. And they had a child out of wedlock.
Well, what's your question?
My question is this. They had a child out of wedlock, although I think they had a shotgun marriage or something like that. And they named her something that did not, according to what my mother tells me, I'm not sure if this is true, they named her something that did not coincide with apparently an approved list of names. So they had to add a second middle name so that she has a second middle name that she still legally has because she had to have a Hitler-approved name.
Yeah, so do you understand what she's saying? When the Nazis took over in Europe and you were Jewish, you were required to add a middle name, Sarah or Adam, so that we would know that you were Jewish based on that middle name.
They added Karen for her. Our family was not Jewish, so
Yeah,
perhaps that.
but that was part of, you see, if you have an all-inclusive controlling government and they determine everything,
Yeah.
then they also determine your identity. First thing they did with the Jews is they eliminated their identity. So that's why they took all their clothes, all their jewelry, everything away from them gave me a tattoo number, that's all you had, right?
And I teach sociology and psychology here, and so I'm interested to know actually about how you feel about the intersection of the history of the Holocaust and World War II and the aftermath of that, and media representation. Speaking to like bystander intervention, and I do think that there's like a very clear theme of heroism with like superheroes
Yeah.
and stuff.
Well,
Might be
yeah, this is, you're at, the courses I teach at Ollie, which is like 8 weeks long, we get into that. So look for me up there and come on in and we'll answer it.
Great, thank
Other
you.
questions? Yes, ma'am.
What do you suggest regarding critical thinking? How do you encourage critical thinking in a world where I can take in whatever media I want and only that, and regardless of what may be out there, how do you encourage critical thinking for the public?
That's a real problem where, see here, this is my life. Everything that is me, right? This is a round object, right? And I hand it to you and I say, this is a round object. This is a round object. If you're a good Nazi, you believe, as Goebbels said, I can make anybody, if I say it long enough, change what you're looking at, and all of a sudden this becomes a circle. So you have to teach people not just to listen to news media. And what we do is we listen to just those that conform what we want to believe. And if it doesn't conform to what I believe, this is a circle, I don't bother, I cut you off. So when you're teaching children, and you're in the first grade, second grade, and you know the story of the blue eyes and the brown eyes and the teacher, right? And you tell them that all the ones with blue eyes are better and smarter than the ones with brown eyes. Then you start hating each other. And then the next week she says, oh, I'm the authority, and now the ones with brown eyes are smarter than blue eyes. So you have to take any situation. And what you do is, and you can do it now, is you go to the internet and you can see an argument or something, and then look it up and say, well, what's the other argument? If that's how you want to teach. One thing, I'm not going to get into that, never mind. So get yourself a round box. It's green. When you get to the point where you believe that it's a green round box, you can leave. But until then, do you have any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Anti-Semitism goes back 2,000 years, goes back to Christ, and what you believe about Christ, whether he's a Jew or whether he's Christian. And it seems like it's almost in the nature of man, unfortunately, that we look for the different, that we're looking for people that we want to be against. That's a very negative way to think, but it just seems like it's been going on for thousands of years. I don't know how you get around it. I think you have to somehow learn to live with some part of it. I don't know.
I'll give you a quick answer. You have to have the strength of your own convictions and not just conform to fit in.
Right.
Because if I'm with a bunch of prejudiced people and that's how they talk, I need to say, I don't accept that. We don't talk like that around here. When I'm with my kids and I'm teaching them and they use a bad word or they call a name, I just stop them on the spot. We don't do that. Words destroy people. So you have to say, okay, I'm living in a world where this is what's going on. Then the question is, how do you make yourself better and how do you influence those around you? If you go out and you want to influence the whole world and get everybody to be nice and so forth, you'll be crucified. I know a guy who tried that. Didn't work. Other questions? Yes?
We're scratching our heads about what can we do and how come and can we explain why people this and that, why they use these words. But it's deeper than that, and from the Torah and from the Christian principles, which are based on the Torah. you know that it's a spiritual battle. And that's where it is, and we have taken a throne truth, which we know from Torah and from Christian principles, from the mouth of Jesus. We know truth. And yet we've thrown it away, and we've tried to put it together with different societal things, and this is what we have. If we don't get back to truth, then my truth is more important than your truth, because I have more money and power. And God is in control, and I think that we have to return to the Lord God.
Yeah.
And we have to return to truth.
See, that's another consequence of the Holocaust. So many people have lost faith in whatever religion. Because they say, you know, we bought into that, and then where was God? When the children were walking into the gas chambers, where was God, and so forth, right?
But they
And
didn't
so,
follow the truth
so
in
I
the
mean,
first place.
that's why I told you the story about my father. He says, I can't give up on my God. That's all I have. I got to go back to something. These are my oars in my boat. And for others, though, younger generations and so forth, we start questioning it and saying, no, what's wrong with your God? So if those that have given up on certain faiths or traditional faiths, right, then where do they go? What is the basis, the core of their existence? And that's where they say, hey, man, anything goes. I can believe this, I can smoke that, I can do this, I can do that.
As the Jews said, they are made to feed the fires of hell, the old Jews of old. Isn't that what they said about the Gentiles and unbelievers? God made them to feed the fires of hell?
I don't know that story.
I read that.
Yeah. Others?
I mean,
I have a simple question.
Yes, ma'am.
You kept saying they in 1928, before Hitler came into power in 1933. Who's they?
Talking about the Nazi Party.
Oh, okay. The Nazi
In
Party
1924,
existed before
Hitler had what's called the beer hall push. And he and his Nazi Party, National Socialists, that were an infant political party, went marching in Munich and so forth, and they went to the city hall to overthrow it, thinking they're going to have a whole rebellion. It's sort of like January 6th. We'll get the movement going and everybody will come in. And they were trying to overthrow the Weimar Republic government. Instead, Hitler gets arrested. Goring gets shot in a very sensitive place. That's why he was a drug addict for the rest of his life, trying to deal with the pain. Goebbels runs and hides, and Hitler, this great leader, runs to his friend and hides in a barn because he's scared to death. And then eventually they come and they arrest him. And they put him on trial, and this is 1924, you know, for treason and everything. He wasn't a German then, remember, he's Austrian. And he hasn't become a German citizen yet. And so they say, you're guilty of it, but we're going to give you a year, give him 5 years imprisonment. And they send him to this prison, which is it's like a luxury cabin on a liner, right? And he has friends and guests and everything coming in. He has everything as if he's living in his home, right? And that's when he starts writing Mein Kampf, which it took 2 years, 2 volumes, published 1925, 1926. And then in there, the first volume is the outline of all of his history and beliefs of anti-Semitism and everything else. And he says, our goal will be, when I come out of prison, 1926, we will now, not instead of revolution and trying to overthrow the government, we will get into the system and we will defeat it eventually. So the next big elections, federal elections, is 1928. So they go in, there's 61 political parties in Germany, right? And the socialists were down here in the lower part. But they start their propaganda. All of the techniques that we use nowadays to try and get people elected, right? Using machinery, internet, and so forth, they're starting to grow. So from 1928 until 1932, November 1932, the Democratic Socialist Party keeps gaining more and more support. So by the time we get to 1932, they now have 13 million Germans that voted for them. They have the highest number. The Communist Party was the second highest number. So then there was this coalition government that's created because there's 61 political parties. And von Hindenburg, who was the president, says, okay, I'm going to appoint Hitler chancellor. But because there's so many political parties and everything, we can control him. Well, we know from hindsight that's ridiculous. Once he got in power, right? 4 months later, Hindenburg dies. And Hitler then when he is now the chancellor, because he makes himself president, but he doesn't take the title president. He gives himself a new title, which is the Führer, our leader. He's not just an elected official, he's our savior and so forth. So from 28 to 32, and then in January of 33, when he's appointed chancellor, all that political stuff is going on. Simple question.
Sorry.
Other simple questions? Now, I think it's only proper we find a German brewery somewhere, and I'll get a stein of beer, and we have and I'm not going to say this because you're taping me. So anyway, thank you for coming.